So we're really interested in the ways in which technology might or might not be able to address issues of loneliness and social isolation. Okay, so one of the interesting starting points is that in this area only about 16% of older adults have access to the internet. So it becomes a danger that the technology is for the minority of older adults and won't benefit the majority of older adults. Second thing, of course, is that loneliness and social isolation, because of the demographics, is particularly acute there. You know, it's very hard to get around, very expensive to get around. People often don't have extended families there anymore because there isn't a livelihood for many younger people. So it becomes a really central concern. So where that got us to is to ask the question, how do people access social connectedness? So we did a really detailed study on how people go about accessing events, volunteering, trying to catch up and communicate with other people, and then how they're able to use the local infrastructure to do that. So we looked at simple things like transportation. Are there bus routes or not? Is the information accurate? With the funding cuts, what happens, first of all, when the bus services change, and second of all, when maybe a social enterprise has emerged to try to address the problems with transportation. We looked at simple things like once they've arrived at the location of the event, how do they get there from the bus stop to the hall? Just very simple accessibility issues, how much it costs, okay, what they like doing. In terms of technology, so the central problem is what technology can do is open up and share information about what we refer to as the enabling links. So the things that older people like to do, can we open up information that's provided by multiple agencies, government and non-governmental organisations, and crucially, can we personalise it? Because a lot of work goes into searching to attend events and to address social isolation. So once we have the information, can we personalise it so it's relevant to the individual older adult in our case? And then finally, how do we open that up to the 84% of older adults that don't have access to technology? So you might say it's useful for 16%. For the others, maybe they have friends, relatives, children, grandchildren, carers who can access the internet and who can use a personalised profile so that meaningful services can be provided to them.
Well, when I saw the word co-creation, I mean, I know what it should mean, but I wasn't sure whether it'd just be somebody's idea of, oh, let's call it co-creation, but it isn't really. But actually, it was more like a team.
Various members of the team contributed ideas. The ideas were seized upon by other members of the team, who then put forward their own suggestions. And those suggestions invariably were acted on.
Well, I didn't really know what to expect, and I didn't really think I had enough knowledge to help with the project at all. But I thought it was something to do and go along and see what's going on.
There is a level of fear with older people about technology, so it was quite interesting, and it was in fact really interesting, the fact that several groups have engaged with it so positively and run with the ball, and in fact want to continue to engage with it.
If we were talking about digital using of apps, accessing technology, we wouldn't tend to go to older generations to begin with. And actually it was very enlightening that when they got involved and how they've got involved.
We take away the power from the experts, the designers, the coders, the people who work in technology, and we share it all. Everyone is an expert.
An early lesson from our project early on is it's face-to-face connectedness that older adults are seeking out. It isn't using social media primarily or Skype, for example. They're seeking out opportunities to develop face-to-face social relationships and friendships with others.
When I looked at the app, I can see some of my own input on it, things that I've suggested in the beginning, and that's quite nice to see. And I think we can all see bits of, what we've suggested sort of like 18 months, 2 years ago.
People really do take notice of you, and you can see what happens in the end, see what you have contributed, and I learnt to have more confidence in my own ideas, and I learnt a lot about other people. Never quite sure whether your ideas are really interesting or right. I think that comes from sort of back towards school. But actually everybody was very supportive, and so it was much easier to contribute. I think it was truly a co-creation process. I didn't feel overwhelmed by the professionals, and I think they did take notice of what everybody said.
As the process went on, I realised that everybody was pulling together as a team. People were contributing ideas, and what the ideas they had led to me having my own ideas.
That's what we've learnt from what you've done in the co-creation, is you've tested all the way through with people, and also the people who designed it. And that's a very good starting point for us, that we know that our single view of the customer, for instance, or the hub, and the way to access it is user-friendly, accessible, convenient, but also secure. It shows actually that when you involve people in those sorts of things, you start to look at things in a different way, and it's very encouraging that they do want to get involved and not just be done to.
In an area like South Lakeland, for example, most of the people have not even engaged with technology in their working life because it's quite rural. Most of the businesses are very small, and it's artisan workshops or it's farming, and they've not been exposed to technology. And it's always been a challenge for us. And as that cohort of people get older, they become more and more isolated. And normally what happens when something's designed, it's a 23-year-old surfboarder's interpretation of what somebody needs. And occasionally they do get it right, but most often it's a bit off target. And the direction that this project has taken, engaging with older people right from the beginning in the design process, what do you want it to do, how do you want it to do it, what do you want it to look like, it's been directed by them. They own it, and I think they're very proud of it as it stands now.
We didn't start from co-creating an app thinking of features, thinking of technology. We thought about co-creating based on what people did in their daily lives and their daily situated practices. That was really important. I think it's very important to start from without preconceptions and without assuming that we know what you're doing.
First of all, it assumes that technology is important in older people's lives, which a lot of people don't. Yeah. And secondly, it assumes that technology has a role to play in addressing their social isolation.
Very pleased with how it's come out. I was a little bit concerned that there weren't enough services on it. The events were good, but having seen it today, it's got the inclusion of a lot more services, and I think it's very good. Right. If older adults can be persuaded to use the app, I think it will increase the self-confidence and give them more confidence to go out and have a fuller life. It's already made my life better by coming out and doing it. There was all sorts of things I'd never heard of that I never got the opportunity to try, but I think there was kung fu fighting in Fletcher Park or something like that. All the information's in one place. They're not having to go onto the big bad web and look for everything.
I think it's a very good outcome. It seemed to be sort of stalling at times, but I think that's what happens. And I think the actual final outcome is really good. I think that would really encourage people to get out when they might feel that otherwise they couldn't.
I think we've created something that's really useful. certain aspects of this I think are really good. The transport option, I was amazed to find that I could have got a bus to places around Kendal I'd never dreamed of being able to get to. But I think there are some really useful things. The facility to look on a map and see where toilets are and where footpaths are as well, because when you're new to a place and you're trying to find a venue, it's not always easy and you end up asking people directions, but with the map you can see where you're going.
It's very user-friendly, it's very intuitive as well, and you can easily navigate around it, and there are some nice little touches in it as well around things such as telling people just basic stuff like the weather, for instance, or what to expect when you're there. Data protection point of view, which is very important to us. I like the fact that it doesn't need personal data, or you're not asking for personal data in order to use it.
And it's unique in as much as that's a solution designed by older people for older people.
And from our work, what we really want to do is to shift the focus away from accessibility to technology and trying to provide ways in which older adults might catch up. In other words, the assumption that older adults have a deficit, to actually say, well, rather than looking at technology, what we need to do is to look at access to services, and access to services that older adults would actually consider to be meaningful services. How can we use technology to open up data and information about transport possibilities? How do we find out what's going on, what information is available about what's going on? How can we link how you get to a place in a certain time? How do we then think about other things that are really important for older adults, such as bathroom facilities, places to rest along the way, and how can we then use technology to open to support these digital pathways as we refer to them? One of the challenges is if we just design technology for those people who we assume are already advanced users and don't have deficits or can't be trained to address their deficits, then we're only going to be developing solutions for the minority of older adults. These older adults love to plan their week ahead. Planning their week is just as important almost as doing their week, and providing this information and this personalised information is a very satisfying process to go through.
The fact that the app can be used on their behalf, or they can be supported to use it, is fantastic. But obviously the ultimate aim is to remove the fear and let the older people use it directly.
The user doesn't have to be the older adult themselves, but the older adult could be their son, daughter, grandchild or neighbour. And this idea that the older adult has to have access to the internet, which they probably won't have, and second of all be a proficient user, which they might not be, shouldn't prohibit them participating in social connectedness.
If they're still not comfortable with the technology, the older people don't have to do it for themselves. They can be assisted remotely by somebody else. And I think that's a really important point, because I believe that technology has a role to play in everybody's lives, even for those people who are not able to make use of it for themselves.
Our approach to design is also that design is not something that gets completely finished. Design is a living thing.
It sets out from the outset to address those issues which are important in people's lives, like social activities, where they can go. But it's multifaceted, really, I think, in that it actually physically addresses the issue of people being able to get out and visit places and develop a social life that might not otherwise be open to them. The age-friendly mapping, so that they can find out where benches are, the mapping of toilets, all those kind of things, the things that are really important to older people, which are not necessarily considered in other aspects.
I think it's important to plan sometimes, because otherwise you find yourself just sitting there.
Yeah.
So it's a good idea to, especially for weekends where maybe there are more things on. So if you know you've got something that you're interested in and you want to do, and you have got a plan for the week, I think it does make you more mobile.
Yeah. And we used the app, and yes, there was something that we were interested in. Yeah. And we didn't know about it. It wasn't on any other website.
I think as you get older, I mean, I've read about people being denied access to toilets in various places. So I think know where there are accessible toilets is very, very important.
I think there's value across all of our services for this app, and we have an arrangement with other rural councils across Cumbria, particularly our shared IT service. Some of our web pages are shared, some of the technology that sits behind that, and there's no reason why that can't be encouraged across those boundaries.
Yeah, I think MobileAge is potentially universally applicable. I mean, the issues are, and I don't think it's just rural areas as well, I think it's cities and everywhere. Social isolation is a big issue in our society, and I think people they tend to sit at home, they don't know what's available to them, and they don't know how to get out and be active. And I think this app addresses all of those issues, and I think it doesn't matter where you live, who you are, I think anybody can benefit from this.